Alright, good morning YouTube. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about something that I've done in my training for quite a long time, but was never really able to give a title or a form to. It was just kind of an idea that occurred to me in training, and I just kind of carried through with any time I made a program for myself, because I've been programming for myself since I started working out. And this is an idea where I've kind of touched on it in a lot of other videos where I kind of talk about progression, and I say something like you want to turn a 5 rep max into a 10 rep max, which is, it's a volumizing approach. It's being able to handle certain intensities for more reps over time and then going up from there. And there's two ways that this is commonly done in a lot of other programs, whether that be front loading, which to my understanding is where you perform a AMRAP on the first set and then maybe even like AMRAPs on the second, third, and possibly fourth set as well, trying to get as many reps per set for however many sets you decide to do. Or you do a AMRAP on the first set and then you choose a specific number to hit on the subsequent sets. So let's say you do an AMRAP with 75% and then you want to do sets of 6 to 8 with 75% on the other sets. So on the first set you might hit maybe 8 to 12, but then on the everything else you just cap it at 6 or 8. Or another way that is commonly done is backloading, which is plus sets, or doing an AMRAP on the last set, which is something very common from programs that take inspiration from something like 531. And these are both very valid ways of progression. These are things that I've done in my training and never really thought too deeply about. I just thought to myself, okay, on this movement, I just want to go in on the first set, do as many sets or do as many reps as possible. And then on the other sets, just hit a certain amount of reps and go from there. Or I want to hit a specific amount of reps for the first couple sets, and on the last one, I'll do as many as I can. And if I hit a certain number, the next time I go into that training session, I add weight. These were very simple ideas that I had and maintained and thought about in my own training, and it carried me fairly far. It took me to certain levels of strength that I was very proud of and worked very well. And these are things that I think anyone can implement. They're not super complicated by any means. Now, because they are very simple, it's very easy for them to be either misapplied or abused even. So that's why I want to actually give them a bit more of a structure. And a structure that I found to be very useful to kind of solidify my ideas around this kind of topic is evolving rep ranges. So I was first introduced to evolving rep ranges by another channel, Natural Hypertrophy, and he has a long playlist discussing the topic. And because it was something fairly new, it was something that I kind of was confused about for quite a while and had to rewatch that entire playlist multiple times to kind of understand it. But also I wanted to kind of make my own addition to the topic and why I think it's really necessary to talk about, why I think it's necessary to incorporate into any program, because too many programs either don't have progression or they rely on progression to come from only one source. They're relying it entirely on weight. They're relying it entirely on reps. They're relying entirely on sets. They only want to progress in one way, and then that's the only way, and they kind of pin it as that's the only thing you can do to actually make progress in the long run. And I think that's a horrible mindset. You want to have a wide variety of ways to progress, simply because as a natural lifter, progress is going to slow down, and the more tools you have available to you to actually allow you to progress in the long term is going to be better for your training. So with this one, we're going to be talking about evolving rep ranges, and there's other systems that exist such as the rep goal system. And just for the sake of being different, I'm going to kind of describe this in my own channel as a power builder progression, because I want it to be something where you understand that strength needs size, strength needs volume, and you can't just, and strength, even though is an expression of, lifting heavier weights over time, to actually develop that ability, you need to do more volume. So when it comes to evolving rep ranges, the power builder progression, power builder rep ranges, when it comes to strength work, when it comes to movements that you're trying to progress on, I like ranges of the 1 to 3, 2 to 5, 3 to 6, 4 to 8, and 6 to 10. There's a lot of videos on this channel discussing these rep ranges and exercises that I think really fit well within them. But to kind of give you a bit of an overview of how you could possibly implement this in your own training. Let's look at the structure of a typical workout that I recommend, right? So it's going to be your main strength work, followed by supplemental strength work, and then 1 or 2 accessory supersets. So with the main strength work, let's say you're starting out with bench press. You're going to do 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 6 reps on the bench press. And the number one thing you have to honor essentially is the fact that you need to be able to hit the minimum amount of reps reliably and consistently. If you hit 3 sets of 3 on bench press, but then the next week you can't replicate that effort, you're using too heavy of a weight. So what you want to do is, let's say you do 3 sets of 3 to 6. I know I said 3 to 5, but that's why you can over time add sets if adding reps or adding weight no longer becomes viable. Add another set, and if you can do that, that's another form of progression. But back on topic, let's say you're doing 3 sets of 3 to 6. On the first week, you do 3 sets of 3. On the next week, you do maybe 4, 3, 3. Then on the week after that, you do 5, 4, 3. And then the week after that, you do 6, 5, 4, or something of the nature, until you can build up to a point where maybe you do 3 sets of 6, or after you hit 3 sets and you do 6, 5, 4, you decide to add weight, because if you add weight to something that you just did for 6 reps, chances are you can probably do it for 3. And then you're able to milk that rep range for a longer amount of time. At a certain point, you're no longer going to be able to add weight in the 3 to 6 rep range. But guess what? There's other tools that you have available. Like I mentioned, you could possibly add a set. Now, rather than doing 3 sets of 3 to 6, maybe you can do 4 sets of 3 to 6 and with the same exact weight. And then you kind of build up from there. Eventually you're doing 5 sets of 3 to 6 with the same exact weight. And then maybe at that point you can add weight again, stay in the same rep range. That is something that you can do when you're programming. That is something that you can do there. And then what happens when you can no longer add weight, adding sets no longer becomes a thing. You change the rep range. Like I said, tonnage is the evolution, and it is the accumulation of sets times reps times weight. Meaning these are 3 variables that you want to increase over time. And they can't all increase at the same time. So you want to kind of give parameters and guidelines to assess when one should increase before the others. So weight can no longer increase in the 3 to 6 rep range. Sets have already been maxed out. You went from 3 sets to 5 sets. Going above that, probably not recommended. So what you could do is now you change the rep range. And usually you will go down because weight has gone up and sets still has the potential to go up. So you did 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 6. Now let's bring that down to 3 to 5 sets of 2 to 5 reps. That might be a lot easier for you to hit. Now the weight can go up again because the rep range is now smaller, and the total demand for you to actually hit a specific rep goal is less, because even though at the top end it's like, oh, you went from 6 reps to 5 reps, well, you know that when you're really pushing heavy weights and pushing close to failure, the difference between 5 pounds more on your 1 rep max and 1 more rep versus your 5 or 6, 10 rep max, that difference in just a small amount of weight or 1 more rep is going to be huge. So that's why even just bringing the rep range down this much is good. And generally speaking, this is kind of like a transition, because you're not going to be able to stay there for that long, and you're going to go from 3 to 6 to 1 to 3. And then now, congratulations, because you kept building up to a point where, let's say your 3 rep max became a 6 rep max, your 6 rep max, and then you just kept bumping up weight slowly, and you built more volume over time. Your projected 1 rep max, and now that you're actually going into the 1 to 3 rep range, is going to be a lot higher than it was before, just because you spent a shit ton of time getting way more volume. And that is an example of what you can be doing. Now, that's an example for the main strength work. You can do this on supplemental movements as well, because generally speaking, when it comes to progressing on certain exercises, I think it's a good idea to do at least 2 in a session. I think beyond that, you want to have things kind of put on minimum effective volume. You want to be using something like straight sets, just because after a certain point in the workout, you're going to be pretty fatigued and you can't progress on everything all at the same time. So on some things, you just want minimum effective volume. You just want to get more volume through lighter weights. You just want to accumulate volume in that way, rather than trying to actually push intensiveness or intensity on those movements. So that's something you want to consider as well to manage fatigue. But generally speaking, that is something that you can milk for a long ass time, and you will eventually come to a point where goddamn, like this 1 rep max is not a 1 rep max anymore. It's a 5 rep max. This is something that I did with a client very recently. Now, he is a novice, which is something that I do have to disclaim because, you know, novices will benefit from almost anything. But when we first started working together, his deadlift 1 rep max was 95 pounds. And when we got to 225, he didn't do it for 1 rep, he did it for 5, which is really good. And when it comes to, let's say, I also did this with another client who is a more advanced lifter, same exact thing happened. When he starts getting PRs, it's usually not a 1 rep max PR, it is a 5 rep max, it is a 10 rep max. And that generally means his 1 rep, because like for one, he's lifting heavier weight, but he's like, so if he did it for 1 rep, if he did what he could do for 5 reps for 1 rep, it's a new 1 rep max. But the fact is he did it for 5. And then that means his total strength ceiling is a lot higher than what he would expect. And we can go from there. He is a more size focused power builder, but the application, the method I'm trying to present to you still applies. And I'm just going to end it off by saying, if you are going to be using something like this, using this power building progression, one thing you want to keep in mind is that you want to stick in the same range and you want to stick to the same kind of same thing that you're doing for at least, I would say, for 3 weeks. Because if you plateau for 3 weeks, you know that something needs to change and it kind of leads you into a deload. So I'd recommend you deload for every 4th week if you are pursuing strength and size concurrently. And if you are past the intermediate, if you are in the intermediate stage, I recommend doing that. But if you're in the beginner stage, not that big of an issue for you. But we'll get more into this topic over time, but that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Karel King, StanStrength.com. I hope you found this video useful and allowed you to think about how you're going to progress. Like, that is the most important thing. Having a wide variety of tools to progress is going to be what helps you the most, whether that be adding exercises, adding sets, reps, or weight over time, and having systems in place that allow you to know when under certain conditions are met, I will add sets. Or when certain conditions are met, I will add weight. When certain conditions are met, I will add reps. These are things that you should have in your own program when you think about programming for yourself, so that progress is at the forefront. That is what matters the most. So that is it for this video. Have a good day.